Peter Bleksley is here with us. We're going to talk about the police, we're going to talk about the probation service in a minute. But let's go back to Gary Lineker, who's on the front pages this morning, because he has finally decided to quit the BBC. Now, did he jump before he was pushed? Let's have a remember of what Gary Lineker was famous for, of course, and I'm not talking about the football, I'm talking about the things he said, particularly about the Middle East.
So I understand why most people refrain, but I'm getting on a bit now. I'm fairly secure, and I can't be silent about what's happening there. I think it's so utterly awful. And now they're talking about, it already looks like it's happening, going into Rafah, where they've sent everybody down there. So, I don't think you can be, it's not anti-Semitic to say that what Israel is doing is wrong.
So Rafah, of course, being the headquarters of Hamas, Rafah being the place where they found the leader of Hamas, and the place where the Israeli Defence Forces actually executed the leader of Hamas.
As opposed to Rafa Benitez, the football manager,
indeed,
which I would rather Lineker stuck to.
Exactly right. And, of course, this was back in May of this year. And, there's nothing more dangerous than a man who only has half the story. And Gary Lineker, unfortunately, because he started this podcast company called Goal Hanger Podcast, is being whispered in the ear by people like Alistair Campbell, by people like Rory Stewart, by people like James O'Brien. So he doesn't actually get a proper vision of the world. What he gets is a skewed, lefty, kind of ridiculous vision of the world, which he is then given to understand in the way that he understands it. It's like people used to say, my father used to describe people like him in the footballing terms as a one-eyed man in the land of the blind, because he's a very intelligent guy for a footballer, but he's not a very intelligent political understanding guy when you go out into the big wide world.
And imagine having those three in your ear constantly.
All the time.
Alistair Campbell, Rory Stewart and James O'Brien. It's hardly surprising that you get a version of the world which perhaps is not entirely a realistic one.
It's really not. And he's also quite good at painting himself as the victim, He calls himself a humanitarian. He had, of course, we all famously now know, a refugee staying with him, but we never saw a picture of the refugee. We never saw anything about the refugee other than a letter that the refugee supposedly wrote to Gary Lineker, which seemed very, very well written and well constructed in English by somebody who had just come here from Afghanistan.
I'm saving up to be a humanitarian like Gary Lineker.
Yeah.
But I'm a long way.
Have you got a nice big house in Barnes?
Him. No, I
West
haven't,
London?
No, I haven't got millions in the bank either.
No.
But
also, have you ever been the victim of racism as a black man, Peter?
No,
because,
not having a look here.
No, because Gary Lineker has. Have a look at this.
Not being good at sport, life would have been very different for me because I was, I was kind of not... I think I would have been bullied at school. They were kind of marginally that way anyway because I was like, this tiny geeky kid with like, darkish skin, and it was pretty much racist abuse. Although I'm not, I'm as English as they come.
He claimed in a podcast interview that he was racially abused because people thought he was black. Now, there are many reasons to racially abuse people. There are many reasons for people to say, I can see you laughing there, for people to go, listen, I was picked on at school, I was bullied. Not because he was black, though. Clearly he's not black.
He's got darkish skin.
Darkish skin.
Because he's got millions in the bank.
Yeah.
And he goes on holiday every other week.
Yes.
And lies in the sun, the lucky blighter.
Indeed.
That's why his skin
But when he was a child, he wasn't quite as dark as that because he didn't go on holiday. And he lives in Leicester, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said was that he suffered racial abuse later on in the interview when he played for Leicester, which included several black team members who were rather surprised to hear that Gary Lineker had been given racial abuse because they thought they were the only ones that got it.
I mean, it's just...
it's amazing.
Staggering. I'm so fortunate in life that I've never been able to get that self-important about myself. You know what I mean? To get so wrapped up in one's own belonging that you just distort the reality of the world to suit your agenda.
Yeah, I had a difficult childhood, mostly because people used to racially abuse me.
Yeah.
Really? OK, then.
I mean, as my old man would have said, like, the men in the white coats need to take them away. That's what he would have said if he'd heard something
absolutely
going on like that.
Yeah, apparently that might also be offensive, apparently, if you say that now. But we're saying it here because we don't care at this point. You know, we've had enough. Also, now that Trump's taken over, we can go back to being as ridiculous as we wish to be. Let's talk about the police for a minute. There's a couple of interesting stories have crossed our desk this morning. There's the one about the police officer who has been fired because he thought he would be helpful if he was able to falsify some documents in order to bring a child from Ghana to this country. What's that all about?
To the wonderful Morning Glory audience, I introduce you to Police Constable Bright Shine Sedziafa.
Is he like one of these? I'm sorry to say this, but he sounds like one of those guys that sends emails to you going, "We've just found out you've won £500,000. It's been left for you in the will of, Mustafa, whatever his name is. Just send us your bank account details and we'll help you out."
Indeed, including your code, with which you access
Sort code, etc.
accounts and all of that, and the money will be with you.
The names in this story are brilliant, by the way. There's better names than that.
Yeah. So anyway, PC Brightshine Sedziafa decides that he will enter the world of people smuggling.
Why not?
Because clearly being a police officer wasn't satisfying enough for him.
Not really, no.
So he goes to Ghana and smuggles a 2-year-old child into the UK.
Excellent.
One might say, was this a crime of compassion?
Yes.
Was he doing it for the greater good?
Yes.
Was he rescuing the child from persecution?
Yes.
Or the such like? No. This child's mother was actually awaiting extradition to the United States for serious fraud
For criminal fraud charges, yes.
Yes, yes.
And what was her name?
Oh, goodness knows.
There's some great names in this story. I'm going to find them for you. Because absolutely incredible stuff. But yeah, I mean, my first thought when I read this story was, hang on a minute, what is this guy doing? How has he managed to get all of this into his kind of into his his working day? Wouldn't you think that the Metropolitan Police would keep him busy enough?
Well, they're not short of work, are they?
I mean, apparently, he was working for the West Area Command Unit. He lied, apparently, about bringing the child into the country and said that he was unaware the child's mother was on a current police tag.
Yes.
Right? Which meant that presumably she was on a short leash. He met the child's mother at the house of his cousin. This is where it gets good. Miss Confidence Horgan. Confidence is a great name for a con artist, isn't it? And then he then later met somebody else who had a boyfriend who he applied on their behalf for a passport, including photos of the child's expired Ghanaian passport, current US passport, expired Ghanaian passport. I mean, this story's incredible. How on earth is this allowed to happen under the auspices of actually working for the police?
Clearly, PC Bright was a little dim, I would
suggest. Very well said.
And consequently, he's out of the police world, very fortunately, and hopefully he will have learnt his lesson.
Well, my question would be, how did he get into the police force in the first place?
We know how many times have we discussed stories like this, and because, of course, in their lunatic attempt to recruit so many police officers, they lowered the bar and lowered the bar and lowered the bar.
And went, hello, mate, Detective Shine, rise and shine and come and join us.
Yeah, and consequently, the standards of vetting were so appalling as to actually be non-existent at times.
Right.
And then we all know the problems with the training, the supervision, the management, the culture, which Sir Mark Rowley has still not grasped and sorted out yet. The Met is in an absolutely chaotic state. And the people I feel sorry for, of course, are the victims of crime who don't get a prompt, professional, proper investigation, but it's also the good cops. And there are good cops who are in that job and doing wonderful, wonderful stuff, but they're failed by the leaders, failed by the training, failed by the vetting, and so often have to work shoulder to shoulder with wrong uns who they are trying to get out.
Unbelievable stuff. Peter Bleksley's here. I'm Mike Graham.